As you can imagine, the framers weren't going to set the procedural rules for every piece of legislation or every roll call vote and so forth and so on for the House or the Senate. And so they just assumed these people would be at least relatively virtuous and compliant with the Constitution and its intentions. And so they left it to each body to set up its own rules. And so the House and the Senate have different rules. But they generally apply Robert's rules, or what are considered Jefferson's procedures, when they operate. We have now 435 voting members of the House of Representatives, and that's frozen at that number. And of course, we have 100 members of the Senate when it's full. The purpose of having 435 members of the House is to have disparate representation. We're a big country with all kinds of people. We have diverse geography, diverse backgrounds, diverse interests. We are a state-based country, except, of course, where the Constitution creates this federal government. Now, can you imagine if a mere 20 members of the House of Representatives have the power to call a quorum, have the power to meet and represent the other members of the House, have the powers to push whatever legislation they wish, whether it's for taxes or spending, national security, education, health, whatever it is? Can you imagine the power that those 20 representatives would have, particularly the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader, who would just call those 20 representatives into their office and tell them exactly what they want them to do and just keep passing legislation with 20 members of the House of Representatives of one party? That's exactly what's going on today. That's exactly what Nancy Pelosi is pulling. And she's using the excuse of the Wuhan, China virus to do it. The Senate meets. The Republicans in the House are there. They're meeting. There are meetings at Costco, because I see a lot of people there. By meetings, I mean us. We're there. Walmart, any major box store. You're seeing people on beaches in this country, people at churches in this country. People are meeting. Some of them are wearing masks, some of them aren't. Some of them are 6 feet apart, some of them aren't. But the House of Representatives has the power to mitigate against a potential contagion. It did it before. Ever hear the Spanish flu? You've heard of the Spanish flu. The 1918 flu, which killed hundreds of thousands. In Philadelphia, there was a flu, there was a pandemic that killed 10% of the population in Philadelphia. We also had what's called a Civil War. You might have heard of that. It went on for some years. The bloodiest war in American history, where there were over 700,000 casualties. Do you know Congress met during the Civil War? Congress met when the Confederacy was on the other side of the Potomac River threatening Washington, D.C. This is the first time in American history anything like this has ever been pulled. Now, the death rate on the Wuhan, China virus is 0.63%, according to the vaulted CDC. And if you take people over 65 out of the equation, it's less than 0.1%. And I've been talking about that here. I've been talking about that on radio. I've been talking about it on Fox for months. You know why? I follow the science. And in this case, the science is, which scientist do you think is making the most sense? Because the science doesn't really exist, or it didn't early on. But some science did. And the people who were making the most logical conclusions and analyses from the science were the people I was following. It didn't happen to be Dr. Anthony Fauci, by the way. And we had these gentlemen, we've talked to these gentlemen, I had them on Fox, we've had them elsewhere, brilliant, brilliant people since mid-March. Now, so the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, who is the greatest reprobate ever to serve as Speaker of the House, she laughs, she dismisses this, she says, what's the big deal? The House can make the rules under the Constitution. The House can't make rules that violate the Constitution. The House can't make rules that undermine the entire purpose of the House of Representatives. They didn't say have a Politburo. So what Nancy Pelosi has done is she has said that if she can get 20 members, each with 10 proxies from 10 other members, which allow, with a blank check, to vote as they wish, there's no problem. And we keep the House safe. So in other words, 10 Democrats give a proxy for one Democrat to vote. So that Democrat basically is voting for him or herself plus 10 others on whatever the issue is, whatever Nancy Pelosi decides to bring to the floor of the House of Representatives. You know what this is called? This is called tyranny.